Okay, so Naxx is coming out in Classic, and people on NA especially are definitely threatening to start PTRing. I'm sure some people already have PTR'd a bunch or whatever, right? I feel like a lot of times the PTR stuff is really to avoid just like super terribly executed runs on live, right? It's not really. It was never really to get progression kills because a lot of these bosses, maybe like 7 of them or so, they were going to die anyway. No matter what you did, you were going to be able to just kill them. So the reason people are PTRing is just to get their execution down, to stop feeding early deaths that'll cost them world buffs, be able to take world buffs through like a longer duration of the dungeon early on. And in Classic, it's probably going to actually turn into eyes on, the second week of Naxx post release when there's a DMF out. So there's a lot of YouTube content out there already talking about how to just get through the bosses, what the basic strats are, like, oh, here you are, just, you and your fucking scrappy fists, no consumes, shit raid comp, no world buffs. How do you spread these mobs out and make it work over a 5-minute fight? Like, yeah, that's cool. But we're going to be speedrunning this stuff pretty soon. And the reason we're able to speedrun this stuff in the first place is because some of the packs are just solved. Like, the tech is pretty well understood. So I wanted to go through our video from the Lightbringer run, and just kind of like talk about essentially what the tech is for each of these packs. It's really I'm not going to waste any time going through this because this video is long as shit. Obviously, right? It's a long run. I'm not going to waste time talking about like playing well on an individual level. That's your responsibility as a player, right? Like, you can look at my setup and be like, yeah, maybe this is dog shit. Maybe I'm fucking terrible at mage. Very likely, only 97th percentile. What a terrible person. Super possible, right? So there's no individual critique here to be had necessarily. It's just about what are we looking to do? What is the plan for each of the mobs that we encounter, right? And so from there we'll run through, I guess, every wing. There's a lot of shit that goes on. The run, despite already being long, an hour and 30 minutes, even though there's a lot of dead time in there, was actually even longer at the release, of Naxx. This guild went on to do a 7-hour prog on, the later server. The release on this server was like a 2-hour prog for the #1 guild, and then probably 2.5 going into 7 hours or 2 days for every other guild. So even though this is long at an hour and something, Naxx can be much longer than that. So it's really worth knowing how to do these trivial fucking pulls without sitting around like waiting for 100% mana and pre-power word shields on everybody because you're scared shitless and you have absolutely no idea what's coming. So before we go into anything specific about A-Bomb Wing, the shit that I'm looking at, I guess the first really thing that's like general to talk about is just the raid comp. Priest groups are pretty solid for most of the dungeon. This paladin setup is because of Atiash aura. It's not because it's like an optimal way to distribute paladin aura to people in groups. When it comes to Saffron, for example, you're going to want to spread these out to get better aura coverage on Frost. For now, this is just to give them spell crit so that they can do more healing, basically. Otherwise, standard shit. This is our Resto Druid, actually. There's no Feral. He's here to just, like, not take up any sort of aura of any kind so that this can be clean. Sook is playing... It was Power Infusion Weaving, which is not an amazing healer spec, but there's a lot of utility to it. And I think Tweety may have been Holy, and Bukutau is SM. Other than that, everything's pretty standard. Nobody's deep prot at all. I think maybe 2, but definitely at least 1 of the warriors has Piercing Howl in their Fury spec. And Ragnarosk is improved Expose Armor. So that's really it. And all mages are fire, whatever. Every other warlock is DS aside from Bukutau. So that's that on general bullshit. We have a ton of buffs in this case, but honestly, like, as askew as that looks, right? Like, it's gonna still feel pretty similar to a classic speedrun. These mobs have, I think it was like around 1,000 more armor on average when not debuffed than a classic mob. So as like a medium tier guild, or maybe even like slightly better, slightly worse, if your debuff coverage is mediocre, you're going to be hanging out on these mobs at like probably 2,000 less armor than, on Classic than anybody was on Lightbringer. So it's just going to be so fucking easy to kill this trash by comparison on Classic. So the net result of us having a shit ton of gear and a shit ton of buffs, yes, it's more than the way you're going to walk into Naxx on week 1. No, it's nowhere near as much as you think it is. Classic guilds that have been farming gear and are up to date right now have most of the firepower that we are able to put out here. What they probably don't have is the execution, but we'll get into that later. So that's enough on general shit. On wing specific shit, we'll just go as we go, wing by wing. So I'll stop here.